Hey, welcome everybody. This is David Bush and I'm alongside Jeff Bush. And today we are talking about the topic of profitable revenue fixes everything. This is a common statement that Jeff makes on a regular basis to business owners who want to drive growth and scale their business and increase their profitability. So Jeff, welcome to the video today. And let's talk a little bit about profitable revenue fixing everything. Tell us a little bit more about that.
First time I learned that, I think I was 20 years old working for a guy, and he was saying, listen, your margins aren't good enough. We're not going to make money if you keep selling at that price point. I'll never forget. He said, Jeff, profit is not a four-letter word. I was like, oh, geez, profit's not a four-letter word. When he said it, he meant it. And I kind of, that sunk in, profit's not a four-letter word. And I'm like, well, why is our competitor selling for so much cheaper than us? And he said, Jeff, because he lives in Anaheim. I live in Corona Del Mar. That's why. And I was like, oh, wow, it's okay to make a profit and you want to make money and live in a nice house and drive nice cars. Like the guys that don't make a profit live in crappy areas and drive crappy cars. And it just kind of set with me at like 20 years old. So, moving forward over the next 32 years, revenue with good margin fixes everything. I made a lot of mistakes in business where, whether it's, accounting problems, inventory problems, legal problems, but thank God I had high margins to buy my way out of all those problems, or if I did a big marketing spend and it didn't work, I had fat enough margins where I could afford to recover and go do the next thing and find out what did work. So I just think, if you watch Shark Tank, like every single time somebody goes on there, one of the first questions they ask is, what's your margins? And if you notice, if they say, well, I sell it for $1 and it costs me 90 cents, the whole Shark Tank's like, we're out, your margins suck. They know, man, from buying businesses and growing them and who can make it and who doesn't. So you need fat margins and you need to be able to drive revenue because revenue will pull you out of a lot of problems, So that's kind of where all that comes from. In my opinion. And when I was selling my product, I had 10 other competitors that were selling for 30% less than me. So I knew I had to add value to sell at that high price point. But if I came down and matched and got into the gutter with them on price, I wasn't going to make any money. And these idiots are selling at a price where 5 years later, they're twice as big as me in revenue and they file bankruptcy. They can't pay their creditors. I'm like, well, that's what happens when you sell cheap and you don't make a profit, so driving revenue is super important and profitable revenue,
Yeah, and one of the things that you've recognized recently in the news is David's Bridal recently filed for bankruptcy with $2 billion in revenue. Obviously not enough margins, but what are some ways that you would recommend that a company would increase their margins? I mean, especially in a highly competitive market where maybe price is a big deciding factor. Well, what are some of the ways that an organization can increase margins to increase profits?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I always increase margins, there's two ways to do it. Raise your price and sell at a higher price or get your expenses down, your costs down on your product. And I had to religiously work on both. If I'm selling a product for $6,000 and my competitor's selling it $4,000 and people are going to shop me and think I can buy the exact same thing down the street for $4,000. What I had to do is add on ancillary products to mine. So when you bought my product for $6,000, mine included 1, 2, 3, 4. And that one over there doesn't. So that established me as, okay, maybe he's worth the extra money. But it had to be valuable to the prospect to warrant spending more money. So maybe I would add on something that cost me $100, 3 or 4 different items that cost me $100, but now I'm making an extra $2,000 profit. Just added value to show up different than the competition. That would be pretty crucial. Yeah, the David's Bridal story. It's funny because I own a wedding venue and I signed up with David's Bridal to pay $100 a month to get leads off their website. They have like a lead platform where a wedding venue can go on David's Bridal's website, pay $100 a month, and you're supposed to get all these leads. Well, I signed up 3 months ago. I'm yet to receive the first lead. And then I get an email, we've gone bankrupt and we're notifying you in case you're a creditor. And I'm thinking, okay, that might not be the best lead site right now. But then I started looking into it, and it's like David's Bridal did $2 billion in sales. Dear God, that's a lot of revenue. How can you screw that up, you know? And then I read another article that said David's Bridal, for every wedding in America last year, I think it was 1 out of 5 brides was wearing a David's Bridal dress. So I'm like, God, they had 20% of the market and 2 million in revenue, and they still can't make a profit. You know, I was talking to some people about David's Bridal, and they go, well, they sell a lot of discounted dresses. Brides go there to go cheap. Instead of spending $2,000 on your wedding dress, go to David's Bridal and spend $695. So they were trying to make up in volume what they lacked in profit. And that's a dangerous game. I don't believe in that game. It doesn't usually work out. You know, it's, you know, I'm going to make money when I do volume and go out of business in the process. I'd heard that before, you know, so keep a good fat margin for, you know, for your business, better chance of success and making it and not filing BK or having to borrow money and just for cash flow. So I don't know the entire David's Bridal story. I'm sure there's a big story there. Like we signed 200 leases on 200 buildings and then COVID hit and they couldn't come in. Yeah, that was an issue. Or they're coming in with a mask on during COVID to try on a wedding dress. But what's funny is the last 2 years have been the 2 busiest years ever for weddings. So these are the 2 best years we've ever had in the history of America for weddings, and they're going bankrupt. What happened? You know, probably margins. It's margins or expenses or real estate leases, probably too much debt. So I don't know all the answers, but I know that they sell cheap. I know that. Don't be the cheapest guy out there, because there's other wedding dress places that are killing it right now, and they're not the cheapest, you know, they're not down in the gutter on price. So anyways.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about your scorecard process, because working together with your CFO, you've run multiple businesses and used a scorecard model to manage expenses, manage profitability, and to look for new opportunities to grow margin. So talk a little bit more about how you consult other business owners to grow their profitability by using the scorecard model or the scorecard process.
So my scorecard always came off my P&L, which was like the Bible. I mean, what did we, you know, when I was selling direct mail advertising, how much did we spend on paper? How much on envelopes? What was the selling price? And I knew I was trying to keep my margins above 60%, which is not easy to do. That's cost times 2.5. A lot of people are basing their business on, if it costs me $1, I'm going to double it, 100% markup, 50% margin, I sell for $2. Pretty clear. I had a 60% margin. So if it's cost me $1, I had to sell for $2.50. So I always had that mindset. If I come out with this product, can I get 60% margin on it? If not, I'm not selling it. So I always focused on products that could get a fat margin and always being innovative. That was one of my core values at my company. It was like integrity, invested in innovation, because we had to innovate to stay ahead of the competition. But the scorecard would just take the P&L and put it in layman's terms, so it was easier to look at. Like, tell me my revenue, tell me my cost, and tell me my gross profit. And if it was going from 60% down to 55, I'm like, oh, some sales rep out here is selling cheap, giving away the farm. And I would find it and go, hey, go talk to that sales rep. You're not allowed to discount. You're discounting too much. Let's do some training on how to sell at a higher margin, selling value over price. You know, you always have sales reps that want to give stuff away, and they'll kill your business. So I was watching what sales reps had the lowest margin, and I might clip them, take them out. If you don't fix it and sell at a higher price, you can't work here, because you're destroying my margins, which will destroy my business and my profit and my chance to sell this someday for a big multiple. So scorecard tracks revenue, margin, and expenses every month. And I'm looking at it and seeing, you know, are my expenses getting out of control? Did we hire too many people? Is it balanced out with revenue? So, you know, reviewing the scorecard every week with the management team and making sure my managers were held responsible for certain metrics, that I knew what I needed and what I wanted. And if it dipped down, it was visible and I could address the team. So I'd address the manager would go address their team on what was going on, you know?
Great. Well, if you'd like to get more information about Jeff's consulting, take a visit to the website, growmyprofit.com. fill out the complimentary business assessment and schedule a complimentary consultation to go through your scorecard, go through your goals and your opportunities to grow and scale your business and improve your profits. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.